Welcome back, everyone. This is Mondo All Day, back to another video. And in this video, I'll be doing an overview of Batman Detective Comics, the Omnibus by Peter J Tomasi. I'll be talking about a little bit of stories, the art, and of course, if it's worth your purchase or not. Before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button to not support the channel, but to keep up to date and watch videos like this. So let's take a look in front of the dust jacket, the spine, the back, and I'll show you a full spread image of the dust jacket. You guys can see that. Alright. To the side, front of the book. The spine. The back. And of course, a full spread image of the art. You guys can see that. It's pretty cool art. I actually like the art. Alright. Now let's take a look at what's inside. So what is this book about? Now, usually when I do my overviews, I usually talk about the story within the omnibus or book. But the particular omnibus, I can't really do that because this omnibus collects different stories from Peter J Tomasi when he actually wrote Batman Detective Comics. And what I mean by that, you get various stories from Mr. Freeze, Killer Croc, Joker, Two-Face, Deadshot, the Mirror, Arkham Knight, and so forth. So I won't be talking about the stories at all because, again, there's too many of them, and if I do end up talking about each story, well, this video is going to be almost like an hour, 2 hours long, and I'm pretty sure you don't want to hear me talk for 2 hours straight about the whole omnibus. But I'll just talk about the book overall. And so, in terms of the stories on here, I'll just say this right now. This omnibus, it is a bit of a disappointment. And I say this because, unfortunately, the stories themselves aren't that great. They're not horrible. I want to make it clear. They're not horrible. I don't hate it. But the stories itself are just not that great. Again, they're not horrible. It's missed the mark. For example, I'm going to give you one example. Mr. Freeze story. I like this story. Probably the best one in my honest opinion. And what I like about it is they do a little twist to Nora. And I like that twist. And it's really interesting to see it. But then it ends, and then on to the next story. And that's what this whole entire omnibus is. It's just a collection of all these stories that Peter J Tomasi wrote for Batman Detective Comics. And so, if that's what you're looking for, then great. If you're looking for more in-depth storytelling, where it's really long story, you're going to be disappointed. Because this book has none of that. They don't even really connect, to be honest with you. Like, they do reference each other. Like, when you read, for instance, the Mirror story or the Killer Croc story, they may reference it later on, but it's not really, like, connected. Does that make sense? And so, to me, that's, like, probably the biggest disappointment is the stories aren't really that good. The stories are very similar to, like, a movie. You ever seen a movie to where, for instance, like Black Adam or maybe Blue Beetle, where you watch the movie and you're like, oh, cool, this is great for the moment. But then once you read it, you're like, okay, next. That's what this whole entire book is, where you read the stories and you're like, oh, this is cool, I like this concept. And then that's it. It's kind of forgettable. And that's a bit of disappointing because I was really hoping this would be really good because so many people were being like requesting for DC to make this omnibus. And I know a lot of people were really anticipated for this book. And I was too, because, man, the hype was real for this book. But then it came out and it's like, really? This is it? Again, it's not horrible. I want to make it clear. Because the writing itself, the writing is actually pretty good. Peter J Tomasi, he knows how to write good books. And the writing itself isn't bad. I want to make that clear. It's just the story, the plot. It's just lackluster. Yes, there are some moments that are pretty creative, but for the most part, though, it's just, they're memorable when you're reading it, but once you're done reading it, you're kind of like, that's it. Now, I will say the length of the stories does vary. I believe the shortest story is going to be Deadshot, which is like 2 issues. So, the length of each story, it does vary. Another short story is going to be Two-Face and Killer Croc, but to me, my favorite one is going to be The Mirror, Arkham Knight, and, of course, Mr. Freeze. Like I said, the rest are just kind of, Some of them are like, okay, cool, I like this. But for the most part, though, the stories are just whatever. And that's the disappointing part, man. Because I was really hoping for this to be really good. But it really isn't. But again, I want to make it clear. I want to nail it on the head. It's not bad writing. It's just the story itself. It's just kind of mediocre at best. Paper quality is glossy because it is an omnibus, so you get the nice quality paper, which I like. The pacing does vary from story to story. There is some stories where the pacing is a lot slower, below average, and there's others where it's definitely above average. So it's really just a mixture, and of course, depending on the story, the pacing is going to vary. Do you need to have prior knowledge? Nope, you're perfectly fine. As long as you know who Batman is and his villains and who Bruce Wayne is and so forth, you're perfectly fine. The art. I really like this art in this book. The art does vary because some stories, the art is a bit cartoonish per se. Others are very like comic, more modern. And others have like a certain unique style. Like for instance, there's one story with Spectre, and that particular art style is different from the other ones, and it has like a kind of dirtiness to it of the art, if that makes sense. And I actually like that. I actually like the fact that a lot of the stories different in terms of art. So it's a new story you're reading from Detective Comics, but also you get a different art, so you appreciate it more. You get more invested. That makes sense? So overall, though, what do I give this omnibus? Honestly, I'm going to give it a low thumbs down. Again, it's not a horrible book. I want to make that clear. It's not horrible. The writing isn't bad. It's good. But the stories, though, that's the part that's disappointing. And again, some of the stories are pretty cool. For instance, this is the Arkham Knight one. And I actually like the Arkham Knight. It does make sense. Granted, it's something that we've read multiple times. I do like the Joker one. Mr. Freeze. To me, the Mr. Freeze story is a standout. But that one is a bit of a lackluster because when it ends and you're like, oh, I want to see what happens more because I like what happens. I won't say too much, but something about Nora, what happens to Nora, it's really cool and unique. And I was like, oh, I like this. And it went with it and I was invested. I was like, okay, keep going. And it does keep going. The story ends and then on to the new story. And it's like, oh, come on. And there are some other stories that like that where you're hooked and you're invested. It ends and then on to another story. So once again, what do I give Batman Detective Comics, the Omnibus? I give it a low thumbs down because at the end of the day, majority of the stories are very forgettable. And again, it's not a bad book. It's just, if there was more stories similar to the Mr. Freeze or Arkham Knight, it would be more in the thumbs up category. But unfortunately, though, there's very few stories in here to where I really enjoyed. And yeah, so again, I give it a low thumbs down. Now we'll take a look at the back of the book or behind the scenes art gallery. You just get a lot of sketch art, which I actually like. It's pretty cool. There's Arkham Knight here in the bottom left. Joker, of course. And I do like seeing stuff like this, like the sketch art and how they develop the art. It's actually pretty cool. Well, I like it. Here's all the sketches. And just so much detail. Look at that. A lot of creativity. And of course, look at this Sedona, which is pretty cool. More sketch art in the back. Here is some writing on here, how they kind of set up the story. More sketch art. There's more. And that is that. Let me know what you guys think. Have you read this book? Do you plan on reading this book? Leave it in the comment section below. As always, make sure you hit the subscribe button to not support channel, but to keep up to date and watch videos like this. This includes an overview of Batman Detective Comics, the Omnibus by Peter J Tomasi, and on to the next one.